The grand throne room of Valdoria Palace echoed with whispers as courtiers gathered in small clusters, their silk robes rustling against the marble floor. Queen Alara sat upon the golden throne, her silver hair adorned with the ancient crown of sapphires that had graced the heads of Valdorian monarchs for 5 centuries. At 78 years old, she remained as formidable as the day she had ascended to power 40 years ago. Prince Marcus stood at the base of the throne steps, his jaw clenched tight. The morning light streaming through the stained glass windows cast colorful shadows across his face, highlighting the determination in his steel-gray eyes. He had waited long enough. Too long, some would say. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "The council has convened, and the matter we discussed must be addressed." Queen Alara's fingers tightened around the royal scepter. She had ruled through wars, famines, and political upheavals. She had buried 2 husbands and watched her kingdom flourish under her steady hand. The thought of relinquishing her crown to anyone, even her grandson, felt like surrendering a piece of her very soul. "The matter is settled, Marcus," she replied, her voice still strong despite her age. "I will step down when I deem it appropriate, not before." Lord Aldrich, the Queen's most trusted advisor, shifted uncomfortably near the throne. He had served the royal family for 30 years and had never seen such tension between the Queen and her heir. The old man's weathered face showed the strain of keeping peace between 2 stubborn royals. Marcus took a step forward, and the royal guards instinctively moved closer to their positions. "Grandmother, the kingdom needs fresh leadership. The people grow restless. Our neighbors see an aging monarch and think us weak. Trade agreements go unsigned because foreign dignitaries question whether treaties made today will hold tomorrow." "Weak?" Queen Alara rose from her throne, and despite her age, she stood tall and proud. "I have protected this kingdom since before you were born. I have negotiated with emperors and kings who now lie in their graves. Do not speak to me of weakness, boy." The word boy stung Marcus more than any slap could have. At 35, he had proven himself in battle, had administered the eastern provinces with wisdom, and had won the love of the people. Yet in his grandmother's eyes, he remained the child who once played with wooden swords in these very halls. Lady Catherine, Marcus's wife, watched from the gallery above. Her hands rested protectively over her pregnant belly, carrying the future of the dynasty. She had urged her husband to be patient, but patience had worn thin like cloth washed too many times. "Your Majesty," Lord Aldrich ventured carefully, "perhaps we might discuss this matter in private chambers. The court need not witness—" "The court should witness everything," Marcus interrupted. "They should know that their future king fights for their interests, not just his own ambition." Queen Alara descended the throne steps slowly, each movement deliberate and regal. When she stood before Marcus, she barely reached his shoulder, but her presence filled the room. "You think wearing the crown is about youth and vigor? You think it's about making grand speeches and winning popularity?" She turned to address the assembled courtiers. "Let me tell you all what the crown truly means. It means sleepless nights when plague strikes our villages. It means choosing between 2 allies when both demand your support. It means sending young men to die in wars you tried desperately to prevent. It means watching your own son—" Her voice caught for just a moment. "Your own son die in battle while you must remain here, steady and strong for a kingdom that depends on you." Marcus's father had died when he was only 10 years old, killed in the border wars that Queen Alara had ultimately won through shrewd negotiation and strategic marriages. The memory still haunted the royal family. "I do not seek the crown lightly," Marcus said, his voice softer now. "I know its weight, but I also know that holding on to it too long can be just as dangerous as surrendering it too soon. The kingdom evolves, grandmother. New alliances must be forged, new technologies embraced, new ways of governance explored. Minister Garrett, the master of coin, stepped forward from among the courtiers. "If I may speak, Your Majesty, His Highness raises valid concerns about our trade relationships. The Merchants Guild has expressed worries about long-term contracts. They fear uncertainty." Queen Alara's eyes flashed dangerously. "Fear? They fear uncertainty? I gave them 40 years of prosperity and they dare speak of fear?" "Times change, Your Majesty," Marcus pressed on. "The world beyond our borders moves quickly now. Steam engines power factories in the northern kingdoms. New forms of communication connect distant lands. We risk being left behind if we do not adapt." "And you think I cannot adapt? That age means stagnation?" The Queen's voice rose, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "I have adapted to more changes than you have seen years, Marcus. I transformed this kingdom from a medieval backwater into a respected power. Do not lecture me about progress." The tension in the throne room had reached a breaking point. Courtiers barely dared to breathe, sensing that something momentous was about to unfold. Young Lord James, Marcus's closest friend and supporter, placed a hand on his sword hilt, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the royal guard. "Stand down, all of you," Queen Ilara commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. "There will be no violence in my throne room. We are not barbarians, despite what my grandson seems to think of our traditions." "I think nothing of the sort," Marcus replied. "I honor our traditions. But I also believe that the greatest tradition of all is knowing when to pass the torch to the next generation. My father would have taken the throne at 35. I am now the same age he was when he died for this kingdom." The mention of her dead son struck Queen Alara like a physical blow. For a moment, her mask of strength slipped, and the assembled court saw not an iron-willed monarch, but a grieving mother who had never quite recovered from her loss. "Your father," she said quietly, "was not ready. Neither are you." "Then when?" Marcus's frustration finally boiled over. "When will I be ready in your eyes? When I am 50, 60? When my own children are grown and wondering why they must wait for their turn while their great-grandmother clings to power?" Gasps echoed through the throne room at the prince's bold words. Never had anyone spoken to Queen Alara with such directness, such challenge to her authority. Lord Aldrich stepped between them, his aged hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, please. The kingdom watches. Our enemies watch. This discord serves no one but those who would see Valdoria weakened." But neither royals seemed inclined to back down. Queen Ilara's pride and Marcus's determination had created an immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. The very foundations of the kingdom seemed to tremble with their conflict. 3 days after the confrontation in the throne room, Prince Marcus found himself in the ancient library of Valdoria Palace, surrounded by dusty tomes and the weight of history. The leather-bound chronicles told stories of succession crises that had torn kingdoms apart. He did not wish to add another bloody chapter to those histories, yet each passing day made peaceful transitions seem more impossible. Lady Catherine entered quietly, her silk slippers barely making a sound on the stone floor. She found her husband staring at a portrait of King Aldwin the Wise, who had voluntarily abdicated in favor of his daughter 300 years ago. "She has not left her chambers since that morning," Catherine said softly, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Lord Aldrich says she takes her meals alone and refuses to see even her physician." Marcus closed the heavy book before him with a sigh. "She sees it as betrayal. After all her years of service, her own blood challenges her in front of the entire court." "You did what needed to be done," Catherine assured him. "The kingdom cannot continue in this limbo. The noble houses grow restless. Lord Blackstone has already begun gathering support for his own claim should our house fall into civil conflict." The mention of Lord Blackstone made Marcus's jaw clench. The ambitious noble had married a distant cousin of the royal family and never missed an opportunity to remind others of his thin connection to the throne. If the direct line showed weakness, he would pounce like a wolf on wounded prey. A knock at the library door interrupted their conversation. Minister Garrett entered, followed by General Rhodes, commander of the Royal Army. Both men bore expressions of grave concern. "Your Highness," General Rhodes began without preamble, "we have a situation. Queen Alara has summoned the Council of Lords for tomorrow dawn. She intends to make a royal decree." Marcus felt his blood run cold. A royal decree, once sealed with the monarch's ring and witnessed by the Council of Lords, could not be easily overturned. "What manner of decree?" Minister Garrett cleared his throat nervously. "Our sources within the palace suggest she intends to name Lord Aldrich as Lord Protector, with powers to rule in her stead should she become incapacitated, and to extend the formal succession beyond your lifetime." The implications hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. His grandmother was not merely refusing to step down. She was actively working to prevent him from ever taking the throne. She would bypass me entirely? Name my unborn child as heir? Or perhaps, General Rhodes said carefully, look to other branches of the family tree. Lord Blackstone has been seen entering the palace through private entrances these past 2 nights. Catherine's hand went protectively to her belly. She would not dare. The succession has passed from parent to child for 500 years. To break that tradition would require desperate measures for desperate times, Marcus finished grimly. He began pacing, his mind racing through possibilities and counter-moves. "General Rhodes, where do the loyalties of the army lie?" The general stood straighter. "The army serves the crown, Your Highness. But many of the younger officers have served under your command. They remember your leadership during the Mountain Campaign. They would follow you, but not into treason." "I seek no treason," Marcus said firmly. "I seek only what is rightfully mine by birth and law. But if my grandmother forces my hand—" "My lord," Minister Garrett interrupted, "there is another way. The ancient laws speak of a trial of competence. If the heir can prove the reigning monarch unfit to rule through a series of challenges, mental, physical, and spiritual, the crown must pass." Marcus had heard of such trials in history, though none had been invoked for over 2 centuries. The challenges must be agreed upon by both parties. "Do you think my grandmother would accept such terms?" "She might," Lord Aldrich's voice came from the doorway. The elderly advisor entered, looking every one of his 70 years. "If the alternative is civil war, Her Majesty might see it as the lesser evil." "You would support this?" Marcus asked, surprised. Lord Aldrich had been Queen Alara's most loyal supporter for decades. The old man sighed deeply. "I serve the kingdom first, Your Highness, and the kingdom bleeds when royals war amongst themselves. I have spent the morning trying to convince Her Majesty to consider a compromise. She is not the woman she was even a year ago. The crown has consumed her. She sees threats in every shadow, betrayal in every counsel that does not echo her own thoughts." Lady Catherine stepped forward. "Then we must act before she does something that cannot be undone. If she names Blackstone as a potential heir, or worse, if she attempts to imprison Marcus on some fabricated charge of treason—" "She would not," Marcus said, but uncertainty colored his voice. The grandmother he had known as a child, who had taught him to ride and told him stories of ancient heroes, seemed very far away from the paranoid monarch who now occupied the throne. General Rhodes cleared his throat. "Your Highness, I must inform you that the Queen has ordered the palace guard doubled, and specifically instructed that your personal guards be replaced with men loyal only to her. The order is to take effect at midnight." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Queen Alara was preparing for conflict, viewing her own grandson as an enemy to be contained. Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing upon him. Every moment of delay gave his grandmother more time to solidify her position, to build walls between him and his birthright. "Send word to Lords Garrett, Whitmore, and Drayton," Marcus commanded, his voice taking on the tone of leadership that had inspired men in battle. "Tell them to come to the hunting lodge outside the city at sunset. We must have allies among the Council of Lords if we are to propose the trial of competence." "And if she refuses the trial?" Minister Garrett asked. Marcus met each of their gazes in turn. "Then we must be prepared for whatever comes. I will not raise arms against my grandmother, but neither will I allow her to destroy the future of this kingdom in her desperation to cling to the past." As the conspirators, for that is what they had become, dispersed to their tasks, Marcus remained in the library with Catherine. She took his hands in hers, feeling the tremor of emotion he would not allow others to see. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked quietly. "History may paint me as the ungrateful grandson who could not wait for nature to take its course." Catherine squeezed his hands gently. "History will judge us by the kingdom we leave behind. Your grandmother built a strong foundation, but she can no longer see beyond her own walls. You see the horizon, my love. You see what Valdoria could become." A commotion in the courtyard below drew their attention to the window. Royal heralds were mounting horses, no doubt carrying Queen Alara's summons to the Council of Lords. The game was in motion, and there could be no turning back. Marcus watched the heralds depart and made a silent vow. Whatever came next, he would not let Valdoria tear itself apart. The crown would pass peacefully, or he would find another way to serve his kingdom. But as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red that looked disturbingly like blood, he could not shake the feeling that peace was a luxury they could no longer afford. That night, as midnight approached and the changing of the guard drew near, Prince Marcus stood ready in his chambers. His most trusted men had quietly taken positions throughout the palace. If Queen Alara wanted to treat him as a threat, he would at least ensure he was not a defenseless one. The confrontation between crown and heir had moved beyond words. Now it would take wisdom, courage, and perhaps a miracle to prevent the kingdom from descending into chaos. Dawn broke over Valdoria Palace with an unusual stillness, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. The Council of Lords had gathered in the great hall, their faces grave as they took their appointed seats. Queen Alara entered last, the crown of sapphires catching the early morning light. She moved more slowly than usual, Lord Aldrich noted with concern, though her bearing remained regal. Prince Marcus stood at the opposite end of the hall, flanked by his supporters. The division in the room was clear. The older lords stood with the queen, while the younger generation had gravitated toward the prince. Between them stood those who remained uncommitted, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. "Lords and ladies of Valdoria," Queen Alara began, her voice still commanding despite the early hour, "I have summoned you to witness a decree that will ensure the stability of our realm for generations to come." Before she could continue, Marcus stepped forward. "Your Majesty, before any decrees are made, I invoke an ancient right. I call for a trial of competence, as is my privilege as crown prince and heir apparent." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Many had never heard of such a trial, while others recognized it from dusty law books and half-forgotten histories. Queen Alara's face remained impassive, but Lord Aldrich saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped the arms of her throne. "You would challenge your sovereign?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I would prove myself worthy of the crown that will one day be mine," Marcus replied firmly, "unless your Majesty fears such a trial." The challenge hung in the air like a drawn blade. Queen Alara's pride warred with her political instincts. To refuse would show weakness, perhaps even suggest she doubted her own fitness to rule. But to accept meant risking everything on an ancient custom that had not been invoked in living memory. Lord Blackstone rose from his seat, his thin lips curved in a calculating smile. Your Majesty, such trials require specific terms. What challenges would His Highness propose? Marcus had prepared for this moment. 3 challenges, as tradition demands. First, a test of wisdom. We shall each propose solutions to the kingdom's most pressing issues before the council. Who will judge whose vision better serves Valdoria? Second, a test of courage, not in combat, for I would not raise arms against my queen, but in facing the kingdom's dangers. Let us each travel to the drought-stricken eastern provinces and demonstrate our ability to lead in crisis. Third, a test of justice. We shall each hear and decide upon disputes brought by the common people, showing our fitness to rule fairly. Queen Alara rose from her throne, and for a moment she seemed to tower despite her age. You speak of tradition, yet you break the most sacred tradition of all, respect for your elders and patience for your time. With respect, Your Majesty, Lady Catherine interjected, surprising everyone by speaking from the gallery. Tradition also speaks of knowing when to pass the torch. My husband offers a path that honors both your legacy and the kingdom's future. The Queen's gaze turned to her grandson's wife with a mixture of anger and something else, perhaps recognition of her own younger self, equally fierce in defending her family's interests. Your Majesty, Lord Aldrich said carefully, moving to stand between the two camps. The trial of competence offers a resolution without bloodshed. Surely that serves the kingdom's interests better than the alternative. The alternative being? Queen Alara asked sharply. General Rhodes stepped forward, his armor clanking softly. Your Majesty, I must report that there are divisions within the Royal Guard. Some question recent orders. The kingdom watches and waits. A clear resolution, achieved through law and tradition, would prevent any unfortunate misunderstandings. The threat was politely stated but unmistakable. The military was divided, and civil conflict loomed if the succession crisis continued. Queen Alara surveyed the room, reading the faces of lords she had known for decades. Too many showed uncertainty, torn between loyalty to their queen and concern for the future. Very well, she said at last, each word seeming to cost her greatly. I accept the trial of competence, but I add my own condition. The challenges shall be overseen by a panel of judges drawn from beyond our borders. The ambassadors of our allied kingdoms shall witness and ensure fairness. I will not have it said that the trial was corrupted by internal politics. Marcus nodded. Agreed. Let messages be sent immediately. Over the following weeks, Valdoria transformed. The trial of competence became the sole focus of court life, with wagering houses taking bets and common folk gathering in taverns to debate the merits of each royal. The foreign ambassadors arrived, stern Lady Ing from the northern realms, jovial Count Ferrando from the wine coast, and inscrutable Master Chen from the Eastern Empire. The first challenge, the test of wisdom, took place in the Great Hall before an audience of hundreds. Queen Alara presented her vision of Valdoria, stable, traditional, secure in its established alliances and time-tested methods. She spoke eloquently of the dangers of rapid change, of kingdoms that had fallen because they abandoned their roots in pursuit of fleeting innovations. Marcus countered with his own vision, a Valdoria that embraced the changing world while honoring its past. He presented detailed plans for new trade routes, educational reforms that would bring learning to common folk, and diplomatic initiatives that would position Valdoria as a bridge between old and new powers. He spoke not just with passion, but with carefully researched facts and figures, showing he had done more than dream. He had prepared. The foreign judges deliberated for hours while the court waited in tense silence. When they emerged, Lady Ing announced their decision. Both visions have merit, but Prince Marcus has shown greater understanding of the challenges that lie ahead. The first point goes to the prince. Queen Alara received the verdict with grace, though Lord Aldrich saw the effort it cost her. One challenge lost, two remaining. The second challenge required both royals to travel to the eastern provinces, where drought had brought suffering to thousands. Here, Queen Alara showed why she had ruled for 40 years. Her experience shone as she organized relief efforts, drawing upon relationships built over decades. She knew which local lords could be trusted, which merchants would provide fair prices for grain, which wells had hidden reserves. But Marcus brought something else: energy and innovation. While his grandmother organized traditional relief, he worked with young engineers to dig new irrigation channels. He lived among the people, sharing their meager meals, while Queen Alara remained in the local lord's manor. When illness broke out in a refugee camp, Marcus risked infection to tend the sick personally, while the queen coordinated medical supplies from a distance. The foreign judges were split. Count Ferrando favored the queen's efficient administration, while Master Chen admired the prince's personal courage. The deciding vote fell to Lady Ing, who declared, "Both showed leadership, but in different ways. This challenge is drawn, no point to either." With the score tied, everything hung upon the final challenge, the test of justice. For this, common folk were invited to bring their disputes before each royal. The cases were real, the consequences meaningful to those involved. Queen Alara presided first, and her years of experience showed. She quickly cut through deception, identified the heart of each dispute, and rendered judgments that followed the letter of the law precisely. Justice was served, cold and exact. When Marcus took his turn, he approached the cases differently. He listened not just to the facts, but to the stories behind them. When a merchant sued a craftsman for late delivery, Marcus discovered the craftsman's child had been ill. He negotiated a solution that compensated the merchant while allowing the craftsman to keep his shop. When two farmers disputed water rights, he found a way to share the resource that would benefit both. The final case proved decisive. A young woman accused a nobleman's son of theft. He had taken her father's sword, a family heirloom, claiming an old debt. Queen Alara, following strict law, would have dismissed the case. The debt was real, the seizure legal. But Marcus dug deeper. He discovered the debt had been fabricated through forged documents. More importantly, he was willing to rule against nobility in favor of a commoner. The foreign judges retired for their final deliberation. When they returned, Master Chen spoke for all three. Justice requires both wisdom and compassion, both law and understanding. Prince Marcus has shown he possesses all these qualities. The final point, and the trial, goes to the prince. The great hall erupted in mixed celebration and dismay. Marcus's supporters cheered while the queen's loyalists sat in stunned silence. But all eyes turned to Queen Alara, waiting to see how she would respond to defeat. For a long moment, she sat motionless on her throne. Then slowly she removed the crown of sapphires from her head. The hall fell silent as she stood and descended the throne steps. Each step seemed to age her, as if the crown had been all that kept her upright. When she reached Marcus, she stood before him for a moment. Grandmother and grandson, queen and prince. "I have ruled for 40 years, she said, her voice carrying throughout the hall. "I have given everything to this kingdom, my youth, my strength, my family." Her voice broke slightly on the last word. "I thought I could not trust anyone else with Valdoria's future. I was wrong." She held out the crown to Marcus, but he did not immediately take it. Instead, he knelt before her. "You built the kingdom, I will inherit," he said loud enough for all to hear. "Everything I know of ruling, I learned from you. Valdoria is strong because you made it so. I ask not just for your crown, but for your blessing and your counsel." Tears ran down Queen Alara's weathered cheeks as she placed the crown upon her grandson's head. "Rise, King Marcus of Valdoria. Rule with wisdom, rule with strength, but above all, rule with the knowledge that the crown is not yours to keep, only to guard for those who come after." As the new king rose, the hall erupted in cheers. The succession had passed without bloodshed, the kingdom remained united, and a new era had begun. Queen Alara, now Queen Mother, found herself surprisingly light without the crown's weight. Lord Aldrich offered her his arm, and she took it gratefully. "Come, old friend," she said with the first genuine smile she had worn in months. "Let us see what my grandson makes of the throne, and perhaps," she added with a flash of her old spirit, "we can ensure he does not make too many foolish mistakes." In the gallery above, Lady Catherine placed her hand on her swollen belly and whispered to her unborn child, "Your father is king now, little one. May you never need to fight for your birthright as he did." The sun climbed higher over Valdoria, shining on a kingdom that had weathered its greatest internal crisis in generations. The crown had passed, tradition had evolved, and the realm endured. In the end, both Queen Alara and King Marcus had shown their love for Valdoria, each in their own way. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all, that true leadership meant knowing not just when to hold power, but when to let it go.